So I want to begin. Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody, for logging on as well. I want to begin with this thought and this question. What is the difference? What is the difference between a red light and a green light? Now, as I asked that, I'm familiar with the fact that there's obviously a color difference. But how does a driver begin to understand the difference between what a red light and a green light? How is it that you can come to a stop sign and clearly the red sign says stop, but how is it that we begin to understand how long we're supposed to stop when we stop? And I want to suggest that the answer to those questions is a word that is the most powerful thing that you will ever possess and the most powerful thing you'll ever use on the earth. And that is meaning, right? So the reason that we know that a red light means stop and a green light means go is because those are the meanings that we have ascribed to those colors and to those lights. And watch this, the meaning is the difference in a red light and a green light. Meaning is the difference between life and death. And I want to suggest that the same way the meaning that you ascribe to a red light and a green light is a matter of life and death in your car, the meaning that you ascribe to the different things that happen to us in life will be the difference between life and death. If I were to survey the room and ask what is the most powerful thing in the universe, some people may say money, right? If you have money, you can buy almost everything that you want. And I think money is powerful. I don't think money is the most powerful. Some people may say influence. You can influence people obviously to do different things, to give you different things, to do certain things for you. Influence is powerful, but I would not say influence is the most powerful. And some people may even say, this is where it may get kind of sticky, but we'll talk about it. Some people may even say truth is the most powerful thing on the planet. And I think truth is extremely powerful, but I do not think truth is more powerful than what we're going to talk about tonight and for this series, which is meaning. And I think if you have money, but you don't give the correct meaning to the things that happen to us and the things that go on around us, you'll lose your money. If you have influence, but you don't ascribe meaning to the correct things, then you will lose your influence. And if you have truth, let me give it to you this way. You can have truth without meaning, but you cannot have meaning without truth. So I'm going to break this down for you. This is really important because this is one of the foundational principles for what we do here as a church. You can have truth without meaning, but you cannot have meaning without truth. So watch this. If I were to randomly start reading off all of the tweets that President 45 has tweeted today, some of you all may be intrigued by them. The majority of you all, the ones that I know here on the call, probably are not intrigued by him. Why? The things that he tweeted are true. He tweeted them. But if it does not have meaning, then truth without meaning does not benefit us anything. However, anytime you get meaning, there's always truth in meaning. So there's not always meaning in truth. Giving me truth but not telling me what it means doesn't do anything. But if I can give you meaning to something, then I always give you truth by the way of the fact that I gave it meaning. And I think one of the mistakes that we make when we come to the Bible in particular, as well as in our own lives, one of the mistakes that we make is we believe that everything is about truth, and truth is important, but truth without meaning does not profit you anything. And so I'm gonna give it to you in this story. This is a scenario. This is made up, right? Most of y'all are on mute, but go ahead and say to yourself, this is made up. Remind yourself for when I give you the story. So let's say me and my friends are hanging out, and me and my friends, we're social drinkers, let's say. So when we hang out, we like to drink. And so me and my friend came here together. me and my boy, and we're leaving. And as we leave, he understands that I'm about to drive after I've been drinking. And so my friend pulls me to the side and he tells me, "Hey, Russ, I think that you should know about the experience that I had drinking and driving, because when I was drinking and then I started driving, I ended up losing track of where I was. I made a big mistake. My car ended up spinning out and I ended up hitting a pole, right? Thankfully, he said he was able to continue living. And so he's telling me this story because he wants me to understand that drinking and driving is dangerous. Now, watch this. Is the purpose of him telling me that story to give me truth, or is the purpose of him giving me that story to give me meaning? Right? If he pours his heart out to me, if he makes himself that vulnerable, is he telling me about his experience drinking and driving, knowing that I've been drinking and I'm about to drive? Is he telling me that? Should my response be, is that a true story? Or should my response be, what meaning should I be giving from the story that he just gave me? And I think at many times we ask the wrong question, and sometimes we land on truth when really truth is powerful, but truth without meaning does not mean anything. And so to give you this context, the entire Old Testament was written in the context of a people who had been stripped from everything. So we know the Israelites, we know that they are God's children, they're God's chosen, according to the Old Testament, according to the text. And so they're writing in the context of a people who have just been freed from enslavement and captivity. So watch this. While they were enslaved and while they were held captive, they had been stripped from everything. While they were in Babylonian captivity, they lost their friends. While they were in Babylonian captivity, they saw family members pass away. While they were in captivity, they saw their traditions dwindle in front of them because their traditions meant nothing, because they had to bow to and succumb to the traditions of the Babylonians. Their stories that they used to tell that gave them meaning were disappearing. And watch this, all types of identity that they had prior to captivity was now being stripped of them. And now that they are free from their captivity, watch this, now that they're free from their captivity, they have to try to figure out what did the thing that I just go through mean, and what does life mean in light of what I just went through? So watch this, they have to ask the question, what did me going through what I just go through mean, number one? But number two, what is the meaning and purpose of life in light of what I just experienced? And at some point, all of us are going to have to wrestle with the same question that the Israelites wrestled with prior to actually writing down the stories and the histories that we see in the Bible. And that is, what is the purpose of life when we begin to lose things that we love? What is the purpose of life when we begin to lose people that we love? And what is the purpose of life as our identity begins to change because life happened? We talked about in our Job series that sometimes we're guilty of blaming things on God that God may not have necessarily forced to happen, but instead it's just a byproduct of living, of being human. And I want to give it to you this way. Many people today walk around with crosses on their arms, crosses on their chest, crosses on their chain, crosses on their ears. And so people walk around wearing this cross, but the meaning of the cross was drastically different 2,500 years ago than it is today. At one point, the cross was a symbol of people who were criminals that were getting that witness justice being done, or the law doing their due diligence in killing criminals, right? That's what it meant at one point. And then an experience happened in which an innocent colored man at the age of 33 was put on the cross. And because he was put on the cross and then buried, and then after he was buried, he left the grave empty and got back up again, that cross took on new meaning. The cross meant one thing prior to the resurrection, but the cross means something completely different post-resurrection. And this is important for us to get, because the cross before Jesus meant criminal, but the cross after Jesus meant redemption. The cross before Jesus means they're getting what they deserve. The cross after Jesus means he was innocent after all and didn't deserve any of this punishment. And if you're not careful, you'll learn that things in your life take on a different meaning. That's the key word for the entire series. Things in your life take on a different meaning based off of the way we experience life. And if there's one thing that you ought to seek, if there's one thing you ought to search for, if there's one thing you ought to pray for, if there's one thing you ought to be looking for, it ought to be meaning. I don't want to work if I don't feel like my work has meaning. I don't want to work a single hour. I don't want to get paid for anything if I feel like my work is not making a difference, if it does not have meaning. I don't want to possess anything if I don't ascribe the correct meaning to it. I don't want to possess relationships if my relationships don't have meaning. And I think at some point we have to look at the fact that sometimes life gives us truth, and our task is to figure out, what does this mean? And similar to the red light and the green light illustration that we began with, the meaning that you ascribe to death, the meaning that you ascribe to failed relationships, the meaning that you ascribe to things that feel like death, such as divorce, the meaning that we ascribe to the problems that we go through, is a matter of life and death. And I believe that when we understand that the meaning that we place on certain things is a matter of life and death, then we'll understand that it's important for us to come to the correct meaning, because that meaning is what we need in order to move forward. And so I want to introduce this topic, this idea of meaning, because I believe that when we start understanding the correct meaning, our life will drastically change. And I'm thankful, as many of you know, we had just experienced a loss recently, and I was thankful that it happened when it has now, because I understand that things mean something differently at 26 than it meant at 20. I remember my barber, my lifelong barber growing up. I asked him about his tattoos that he had, and I said, "How do you feel about your tattoos now that you're probably in your 40s? How do you feel about your tattoos now?" He said, "I don't regret my tattoos, but if I would go back, I may choose my tattoos differently, because now that I'm older, my tattoos take on a different meaning." And if there's one thing that you want to make sure that you have the proper meaning. Truth is powerful, but meaning is more powerful. Money is powerful, but meaning is more powerful. And influence is powerful, but meaning is more powerful. And so what we're going to do is begin to look introspectively, look internally, look inwardly at ourselves and figure out, what is God trying to get me to understand? What do these things around me mean? Because if I don't have the correct meaning, death will rattle me. If I don't have the correct meaning, a job loss will rattle me. If I don't have the correct meaning, fake friends will rattle me. If I don't have the correct meaning, I don't have the substance to stand on that I want to have to stand on. And so the one thing that you have to have is meaning, because nothing's worse than, watch this, nothing's worse than for God to be trying to push us somewhere, and he wants a lesson for us to learn, and we learn the wrong lesson, right? So we experience something by way of life. Life happened. I'm not going to say God caused it, but life happened. Something unfavorable happened. It hurt. It still hurts. It pained. But nothing's worse than giving that occasion, that pain, that feeling, a meaning that God did not intend for you to give it. And that is how one of the things that we're going to be talking about in this series is there's a book called Man Making Meaning or something to that respect. I'll give it to you properly at the end of it. But he talks about what's called existential frustration and an existential vacuum. And there are all these fancy words. What he's trying to tell us is sometimes you can confuse a lack of meaning with mental illness, because you not being able to make meaning from it caused you to slip into depression. You not being able to make meaning from it caused you to slip into a place mentally that you did not want to be. And so it's important that at some point we move past, my father wasn't who I thought my father should have been, right? That's truth. But leaving it at truth without gaining meaning profits me nothing. The purpose is, what does this mean? And if I can get the correct meaning from it, how does this impact the way that I view life? Because I believe the most precious thing that God can give us is life. And one thing I don't want to do is waste a gift from God, such as life, because I did not give the proper meaning to what I experienced when I went through it. And I understand that as a church, many of us are experiencing different things, whether it be grief, whether it be depression, whatever it is, the mood swings, you're feeling it one day, you're not feeling it the next day, because at the end of the day, all of us are going through the pandemic. We're all dealing with policing and protests. We're all dealing with unemployment rates. We're all dealing with the fact that life was tough before all of that happened. And if we don't ascribe the correct meaning, then our inability to come up with the correct meaning will rob us of our ability to live. And you know, at our church, we love to quote what Jesus said when he said, "I've come that you may have life, and that you have it more abundantly." There is no abundant life without proper meaning. If I go through life and something happens, and I begin to wonder, does this happen because God hates me? That can rob me of an abundant life. If I experience death and I feel like I experienced this death because God could have stopped it and he didn't, and so God is no longer real, and I'm just going to kind of just sit and soak in this despair and in this grief, then we will rob ourselves of an opportunity to live life. And so for us to know that God intends for us to have life abundantly, a big part of that is understanding that in order to live an abundant life, we have to ascribe the correct meaning. We have to assign and ascribe the correct meaning. And so we're going to be talking about what does it look like to have meaning in work. Dr. Katie Cannon, the founder of Womanism, she said, do the work that your soul must have. Do the work that your soul must have. So when we talk about what's the meaning of work, work is not something that we do because we feel like we have to. I don't want that work. Work is something that we do because if I don't do it, my soul's not going to let me rest. I'm not going to be able to sleep well at night. I'm going to be questioning, how did I get here? And I'm going to be questioning who did it and how, right? Because I understand that what I'm doing, I'm not just doing it for no reason. I'm doing it because there's meaning to it. And so we're going to be talking about what meaning do we want as we talk about relational intelligence, what meaning does this relationship have? Is this a relationship whose meaning is the meaning of this relationship for us to be friends? Is it for us to be associates? Is it for us to be mentors or advisors or mentees, or is it dead, right? We don't know. We don't know what it is, but it's important to ascribe the correct meaning. So what we're going to do, we did stream the first part of this to Facebook, and so we thank everybody who joined us virtually. We're going to be doing part 2 in our Zoom call and make it a little bit more personal and personable. If you have somebody you feel like they'll be blessed from the importance of meaning, please share this with somebody. But we are going to go ahead and end the Facebook Live so that we can begin the portion where we actually do more workshop style and make it more personal.